Before beginning this video, the sensitive topic of Jewish power, the political Zionist movement, and the close relationship of Vladimir Putin and Benjamin Netanyahu, we need to clarify the YouTube terms of service and community guidelines. I seek only the destruction of the political Zionist movement and the international Trotskyite banking cartel. I want to see them all in jail, and you know who they are. Let's start with the poster boy, Heinz Kissinger, to name a few. This has nothing to do with right-wing and left-wing, or wars of bankers' wars. The likes of a George Soros or a Heinz Kissinger are simply the right and left arms of the Rothschild banking financial dynasty and those 13 elite families of Europe. Nothing more, nothing less. They fund everything. They fund all sides of politics. They create chaos and they create polarization so people cannot come together. We shouldn't have to debate this. Given the extraordinary sensitivity of the subject matter, I must make the viewer and YouTube community guidelines aware of my personal political philosophy when addressing issues of Jewish power. My philosophic approach to the issue is taken directly from the great and humorous British Jewish activist Paul Ison. His article of 10 pages written in 2004, titled aptly, quote, "Jewish Power," must be required reading for all those who seek to address the core issues that surround us. The YouTube terms of service state explicitly that sensitive issues may be addressed within the rules of the EDSA or educational, documentary, scientific, or artistic content provisions. Quote, "Sometimes videos that might otherwise violate our community guidelines may be allowed to stay on YouTube if the content offers a compelling reason with visible context for viewers. We often refer to this exception as EDSA, which stands for educational, documentary, scientific, or artistic. To help determine whether a video might qualify for an EDSA exception, we look at multiple factors, including the video title, descriptions, and the context provided. EDSA exceptions are a critical way we make sure that important speech stays on YouTube while protecting the wider YouTube ecosystem from harmful content." End quote. There is also another factor with community guidelines that is not mentioned. That is, who are you? If you think YouTube is just a private company, you are mistaken. Consider it the NSA or the Pentagon. And if you play footsies with the white nationalist movement or any group or individuals involved with race-based ideologies, you will get banned. So it looks like it's Rumble and BitChute for you only, for now at least, and I promise you, they'll be going soon. My public and private life is identical. The fact that you were too stupid to read the YouTube terms of service is your problem, and I will seek to maintain a presence on YouTube where busy people with jobs and careers often hang out. Jews have warned me for years about Israel and its cyber domination, and Jews assist us to this day. And more come on board. The only people this annoys, Israeli hardcore Zionists, Israeli firsters, and Benjamin Netanyahu.
The Holocaust is fake. The Holocaust. You kike! You kike! 6 million lives! You fucking kikes! 6 million lives! You kikes!
We understand the issues are emotional and frustrating, but we keep our heads and sensitivities. The Irish have been putting up with derision, bad jokes, and potato famines for a few hundred years. We hope other identifiable groups gain a sense of humour over time. With all that in mind, let us begin. The video you're about to watch is an excellent little production from, I think, early 2020. I didn't make this. If after watching this video you think Vladimir Putin is an enemy of the New World Order, Jewish power, and the political Zionist movement, I take it you are a syphilis-infected monkey in the late stages of the disease, that is, the late stages of brain dysfunction. Hate to be so rude, but I just don't know what else to call you. I apologise to decent, syphilis-infected monkeys everywhere for comparing them to, quote, Putin bros. I hope that's not racist. In other words, if you are still aroused by your Putin poster on the wall, you are a moron, or you are a troll farm. Worse than a Q-tard on meth and steroids. Johnny Gat, a pseudonym, is an American of Asian descent who made good videos on important subjects, especially after I put a rocket up his ass.
No, he's not. He's had tons of stuff thrown at him. He does nothing.
That full interview with white supremacist Adam Green will go up later, and I will give you the full background, especially the identity of this guy, Joseph Davies, who introduced me to Adam Green. Wait for that one. Johnny Gatt no longer posts, I guess after the suicide allegedly of young fatherless white nationalist Matthew North, he got a bit scared. Why not? There have been a few deaths since allegedly reformed white nationalist Nick Spiro died suddenly from the flu in October 2017. Maybe Joseph can explain the deaths, or maybe Adam Green, I don't know. But I will be raising issues of Adam Green, and if you don't know who he is, don't worry, you will very soon, as I do a full little expose of Mr. Adam Green and what he's been up to. Anyway, I digress.
What is your position on the work and research of truth pioneer Brendon O'Connell from Australia? I don't know him.
That's another troll too. That I've got nothing good to say about that guy. Next question.
Okay, let's keep going. I guess we'll leave it there, Adam. I don't see any more questions.
Don't end on that. Come on, someone else.
And I do like taking calls. I would like to take calls.
Great.
I don't want to. If somebody starts bringing up Brendon O'Connell shit, I don't want to talk to him for 10 minutes or anything like that.
All right, sounds good.
With Putin fever running high as his massive East India trading company Bot Army dominate the information warfare sphere, let us end once and for all the Scott Ritter, Colonel McGregor and Ryan DAWSON fantasy that Vladimir Putin is here to save us from his buddy Klaus Schwab and Heinz Kissinger. Johnny Gatt does a great job, but he did miss a few articles and issues. Perhaps he did address certain issues in another video, but they are not present in this excellent one. Let me address those missed issues here. The core issue of total absolute domination of Israel and cyber was not addressed, and given the gravity it obsessively requires. The complete penetration of US critical infrastructure and high security databases, plus Epstein-style sexual compromise, bribery and blackmail have eviscerated the US body politic and business world. This is what gave Bibi and the gang the confidence to move in and totally subvert US business, military, political, and the intellectual class. It's been going on for a long time, try 100 plus years. The long-term Soviet planning are the commies in suits from the Frankfurt School like Heinz Kissinger and George Soros, not decoy lunatics like AOC and the Mod Squad, and drag queen storytime, crisis actor, coke dealers and pedophiles on probation. Run by General Jim Jones' III, Interactive Internet Activities Online Psychological Warfare Programs. It's all fake news, fake. I give Johnny Gatt a B+ for his efforts, but considering the joke that the internet is, he has still done an excellent job from his bedroom with a cheap microphone, tying up specifically the Netanyahu and Putin connections and the long history of Soviet and Israeli ties. Please watch my must-watch playlist for the details on exactly what Israel controls and dominates, especially Microsoft and Intel Corporation, core coding and research and development, all done within Israel and all the ramifications. It was a lost moment to have missed that few things and tie it up with Putin and Russian penetration of Israel and the United States, and especially Putin's pushing of the emerging multipolar world order or Eurasian trading bloc, which no Putin bro want to discuss. Those articles detail the Eurasian Economic Union and centrality of the Chinese Belt and Road Project and the tie that binds Bibi, Vlad and Xi and Eric Stolz, the Chancellor of Germany. Hitler first tried to dominate Eurasia and told his Anglo-Saxon brothers in the UK that they had the ocean and their colonies and he would control Eurasia. It was a fair deal. Once Hitler failed, it was Stalin's turn, and some say it was the beginning of the end in Afghanistan for them. In 2001, the United States elites with the political Zionist movement had to go via the excuse of 9/11 and the Oded Yunon plan, making the Middle East safe for Israel, which in reality was making the Middle East safe for Greater Israel, the Eurasian trading bloc and the Belt and Road. This is a central banker cartel plan. This is not an Israeli, a German, a French, a Russian, or a Chinese plan. This is a central banking cartel plan, using their subsidiaries and their agents within those countries. Please, no one understand the difference. When the United States had finished smashing the place to pieces, it was Russia's turn to play pimp daddy with Israel, and it seems this deal is not quite going according to plan. Many Israeli commentators have been completely honest and said, Russia being our pimp daddy will be better. We'll be able to deal with those pesky brown-skinned Arabs with our, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Semites from Central Asia. I mean, seriously. They just put it in your face. Where are the Putin bros? Oh, the Putin bros, but you love the Palestinians, and China and Russia are here to help with the Palestinians, aren't they, Scott Ritter? Aren't they, Colonel McGregor? It's ludicrous. But it doesn't matter. These people are all paid or compromised. Ask Scott Ritter, 5 years in jail for masturbating on a live stream to a 15-year-old girl that turned out to be a detective. But, Don't ever let that get in the way of a Putin bro and the troll army bot farms. With regards Johnny Gadd in his excellent video, unfortunately not a single mention of the Kissinger and Yuri Primakov role in placing the St. Petersburg mob nobody Putin in power, whose sole job was to protect the Kissinger and Associates IMF plant Boris Yeltsin from arrest for massive corruption. I could go on, but on the whole, top effort from a few years ago, and you get the message. Vladimir Putin is no enemy of the New World Order, Netanyahu, or the political Zionist movement, and Lord Jacob Rothschild and the City of London East India Trading Company. He is a plant of the IMF, Davos, and Kissinger and Associates, and when the real Russian nationalists, General Lebed and the Russian military, went to get rid of this deep state operative, that is Vladimir Putin,
группы сотрудников ФСБ, направленные вами для командировку для работы под прикрытием правительства, на первом этапе со своими задачами справляется.
General Lebed was killed in a helicopter crash in 2002. How convenient. We can but dream of a General Lebed figure to do the work for us now. Right now, the greatest Russian nationalist is, ironically, Yevgeny Prigozhin and General Sergei Shovokin, who know the true state of the Russian army in Ukraine and sense the end is near for Russia unless they get rid of Putin and his general staff. In fact, it may be that Western intelligence tipped off Putin that a coup was in the air. After all, Putin and his incompetent general staff are NATO and the United States' greatest asset right now as the Ukrainian offensive heats up. Regardless, this is just an introduction. I needed to clarify those community guidelines, and I urge you to never, ever get involved with the so-called white nationalist movement, run by rogue FBI, ADL, and Israeli intelligence. For now, I give you Johnny Gatt's take on the long, close relationship between Israel and the Soviet Union and the ramifications in the ongoing battle for Eurasia. Let us attend.
In cyber is a real domain of power. In cyber is a real domain of power.
There's no more beef between me and Brendon. Him, and even some of my fans, have criticized me for not covering certain topics. Well, here it is. Superior intelligence agencies are able to infiltrate other intelligence agencies. Just like how the Mossad has infiltrated the CIA, the KGB has infiltrated the Mossad. And within the intelligence community, the KGB is even seen by some as the forefather of the Mossad.
But you can't blame Mossad because the school is an old school. It's an old Russian school that suggests that once you're a Mossad agent, you're always a Mossad agent. You cannot leave, you cannot immigrate, you cannot do other things. And you choose a life and you stick with that life.
Mossad sold a backdoored version of Promise software to the Sandia Nuclear Development Laboratory, allowing them to steal some of the most sensitive US nuclear secrets. Rafi Eitan, who was behind Promise Software, also worked with Zalman Shapiro, the president of NUMEC, to steal bomb-grade uranium from the US. Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu was also involved in smuggling US nuclear technology to Israel. He conspired with Richard Kelly Smythe, the president of Milco, to illegally obtain nuclear triggers from NASA. Despite decades of nuclear espionage, Magal Security Systems, owned in part by the Israeli government, has contracts to guard nuclear power and weapon storage facilities in the US. So you have Mossad stealing nuclear secrets from the United States. Now let's look at KGB agents who have been caught stealing nuclear secrets from Israel. Yuri Linov was sentenced to 18 years in prison for spying on Israel's top-secret nuclear program in Dimona for the KGB. Professor Kurt C., a nuclear physicist at the Technion Institute of Technology, was another KGB agent caught spying on Israel. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison for passing secret material to the Soviets. Seed's case shows that some of the Israelis working in co-production projects with the US are actually KGB agents.
A 1996 Defense Investigative Service report noted that Israel has great success stealing technology by exploiting the numerous co-production projects that it has with the Pentagon. It says, placing Israeli nationals in key industries is a technique utilized with great success.
Back in 2018, the House and Senate passed a bill mandating that NASA work closely with the Israel Space Agency, despite the fact that Israel has gotten caught stealing nuclear technology from NASA. Professor Sandra Troyan sued Caltech University for trying to ruin her career after she told the FBI that an Israeli scientist passed NASA rocket secrets to his government. In March 2010, Troyan hired Amir Ghat, who earned his PhD in aerospace engineering from Technion. 2 months later, a virus attacked Troyan's computer network at Caltech, causing hundreds of project files to be uploaded in rapid succession to an unknown IP address outside of Caltech. Troyan traced the virus that caused the network problems to Amir's computer. Caltech, which didn't want to jeopardize the $8 billion contract they had with NASA, dismissed Troyan's concerns, and Amir went back to Technion. In 1991, Jimmy, whose real name is Samuel Maktai, confessed to spying on Israel for the KGB and was sentenced to 7 years in prison. He immigrated to Israel in 1972. After a couple years, he was appointed to a classified position in Israel Aerospace Industries Engineering Division, which at the time was working on the Lavi fighter jet, built by US technology. According to the documents released by KGB archivist Vasily Mitrokin, Jimmy provided the Russians with a lot of information on that project and on other secret matters. So in these co-production projects, you have Israeli aerospace engineers stealing technology from the US, and you have Russian aerospace engineers stealing US technology from Israel. Some of us online are wondering why Whitney Webb decided to leave this information out. She's a very intelligent journalist, but her boss won't let her criticize Russian intelligence. Richard Silverstein, who wrote for Minpress News for several years, did a piece on the KGB's infiltration of Israel. Then Manar Muhawesh, its CEO and editor, killed the piece. Don't you find it strange that Minpress journalists criticize the CIA every day? Meanwhile, they're not allowed to criticize the KGB? There's a reason we don't hear about Russia's relationship with Israel in the alternative media. Pulitzer Prize winner Seymour Hersh wrote in The Samson Option that major secret decisions of the Israeli Defense Ministry, including dealings with nuclear weapons, were being leaked to Moscow. Yet investigators were unable to find out how the KGB was able to transmit its intelligence out of Israel. The investigators were able, however, to determine that only a small number of Israeli officials had access to all the material that had been funneled to the KGB, including at least one of Golda Meir's personal aides. Alexander Radelis, the former coach of Israel's national table tennis team, was sentenced to 4 years in prison on charges of spying for the KGB during his IDF service. Dr. Israel Beer, former liaison officer on intelligence to then Defense Minister David Ben-Gurion, was sentenced to 7 years in prison for passing data to the Soviets. The Shin Bet is Israel's equivalent of the FBI. Former Shin Bet officer Luke Jan Levi revealed all of their planned operations against the KGB to the Soviets and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Gregory London, an engineer who was recruited by the KGB, immigrated to Israel in 1973. He worked on the maintenance and upgrade of the engine for the Israeli-made advanced Merkava tank and was sentenced to 13 years in prison for passing that technology on to the Soviets. Dr. Marcus Klingberg was the KGB's top spy at the Israel Institute for Biological Research, where Israel reportedly developed silent assassination measures used on occasion by the Mossad. He was arrested and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Shabtai Kalmanovich joined the Israeli Labor Party, was appointed to a position in the government press office, and worked as a mole for the KGB. He later moved to the Knesset and also had a close relationship with former Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir. After being caught, he spent 5 years in prison, then was handed back to Russia as part of an intelligence deal in 1993. Once in Russia, he made millions of dollars working in organized crime and was later shot over 20 times near Putin's office. In Israel, many see Avigdor Lieberman as a Russian intelligence asset. While he was Minister of Strategic Affairs, Israel Defense reported that the Shin Bet withheld information from him pertaining to Iran, but gave Mashulon full access to information when he held the same position. Lieberman called Jewish Power Party's Ben-Gurion a Shin Bet agent. Gavir then sued Lieberman for defamation and called him a KGB agent. Because of his war crimes, former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon is widely known as the Butcher of Beirut. Meanwhile, Putin considers him an outstanding statesman and military commander. Putin stressed that Sharon will be remembered in Russia as a consistent supporter of friendly relations between Russia and Israel, who made a significant contribution to expanding mutually beneficial cooperation. Sharon's parents were Bolsheviks born in Russia. US intelligence analysts also believe that Sharon may be a Soviet asset. When Pollard got arrested, one CIA officer was quoted as saying, "If Mossad was involved, that means copies of everything were going to the KGB's Moscow center." Ariel Sharon was a prime minister when Israel attacked the US on 9/11. That means Russia knew the attack was going to happen. In 2001, Putin said that he had a premonition of the 9/11 attack. Quote, "I told my American colleague, this really worries me. I have a feeling something is going to happen, that they are apparently preparing something." CNN wasn't smearing Russia 20 years ago, and Russian state media corroborates this story. Putin telephoned Bush 2 days before 9/11 and warned him that there was going to be a terrorist attack coming out of Afghanistan. Former FBI agent Michael Gerald Dick told Sputnik that Russia's quick response helped the US focus on the real threats. But Russia didn't focus on Israel. Instead, they helped Israel pin the blame on Afghanistan and Osama bin Laden. Russia will continue to provide intelligence information we have collected on the infrastructure, location, and training of international terrorists, Putin said. When the US prepared to invade Afghanistan, Putin coordinated with Central Asian nations to allow US forces to use military bases of the former Soviet Union. After the US invaded Afghanistan, Putin came to Texas and Bush said, "You only invite a good friend to your home." In response, Putin said that the US was fortunate at such a critical time in its history to have such a man of character at its helm. He said this while Bush was launching the war on terror.
But when I was asked the question, do you trust Vladimir Putin, in front of a huge press conference after our meeting, my answer was yes. And I could have tried to be clever like Ronald Reagan, who had the great answer, trust but verify, but that would have sounded like plagiarism. And so I said, yes. And the reporter said, why? And I said, because I looked into his eyes and I saw his soul.
Before the invasion of Iraq, Putin lied to Bush about Saddam planning terrorist attacks against the US. After September 11, 2001, and before the start of the military operation in Iraq, the Russian special services received information that officials from Saddam's regime were preparing terrorist attacks in the United States and outside it against the US military and other interests, said Putin. Both Putin and Bibi had foreknowledge of 9/11, and both of them lied about Saddam planning to attack the US.
I said that the West really doesn't understand militant Islam. So I wrote a book in 1995, and I said that if the West doesn't wake up to the suicidal nature of militant Islam, the next thing you'll see is the militant Islam is bringing down the World Trade Center. Here, it's Saddam's whim. He decides, he pushes the button. Right. He has a peculiar way of resolving issues like that. And during the Gulf War, there was a debate, a problem of some medical shortages. He was sitting in the cabinet room, and he called the health minister to the other room, and he killed him. Well, I think he can press the button. He can press the trigger.
Jack Bernstein was an insider, an American Jew who moved to Israel, got familiar with the Zionist and Marxist movements, then decided to become a whistleblower. In his book titled The Life of an American Jew in Racist Marxist Israel, he covers Israeli false flag terrorism against America, including the Lavon affair and the attack on the USS Liberty. He also predicted that 9/11 and the war on terror would happen. He writes, "When will Israel stir up another war? 1985, 1986? It is difficult to predict, but it is certain that Israel will cause another war. Unless the American people learn the truth about Zionist Marxist Israel and act to stop the politicians in Washington from bowing to the American Zionists and stop using American taxpayers' money to finance Israel's war machine. Will you someday be mourning the loss of your son or brother because of Zionist treachery?" He also writes, "It isn't expected that the Moscow leg of the triangle will become militarily involved. Moscow will merely sit back and let the US weaken itself in helping Israel fight the Arabs." This is exactly what happened. When Bush launched the war on terror, Putin was egging him on. The US is bankrupting and demoralizing itself fighting Israel's wars. This also benefits Russia. Even Alexander Dugin, Putin's former advisor, admits this.
The beginning of the 2000s, with a simultaneous attack of terrorist group against New York, against the United States, with the coming of power of Vladimir Putin in Russia, that was the moment of the when our decline stopped. That was the turning point in our history, in Russian history, when we stopped to decline. And when we stopped, that was as well the kind of new obstacle to this globalization and unipolarity that appeared immediately, because unipolarity doesn't let Russia as a sovereign country to exist, doesn't give a right to exist. So China's growth as well, the other concept. And little by little, there began a kind of talk about the end of unipolar movement. So that began the transition time. But what is this transition?
Because RT criticizes Bush's war on terror, some people believe that Putin is against it, but in reality, he supported it. This is just like when RT says that the West is backing terrorism when it supports Saudi Arabia, but completely ignores the fact that Putin is selling guns to the kingdom. Russia's state-owned media, RT, does this to make Putin look good. Russia is arming Syria and profiteering from the war. Despite this, some people believe that Putin is trying to end the war. Putin has allowed Israel to bomb Syria well over 200 times. They just have to give a heads up before they strike so Russians don't get killed. Israel's goal of destabilizing Syria has been successfully accomplished. Regime change was never the goal. Just over 2 months ago, Russia didn't shoot back when Israeli F-16s blew up a Syrian military complex. Russia still hasn't taught the Syrian army how to use the S-300, and this war has been going on for 8 years. Bernstein also wrote about the scenario. Quote, "Most people, and it seems most Arabs, are of the impression that since Soviet Russia sold equipment to Egypt and other Arab countries, the Soviets were in support of the Arabs in the 1973 war. This is a false impression. To understand that this is the result of more deceit on the part of Israel and the Soviet Union, you must be aware of the Golda Meir-Stalin Pact. Golda Meir had been born in Russia, grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and in 1921 migrated to Palestine. In 1949, Golda Meir became Israel's first ambassador to the Soviet Union. Representing Israel, Golda Meir, a Bolshevik Jewess, met with 2 representatives of the Soviet Union, Kaganovich, a Bolshevik Jew, and Stalin, who married a Bolshevik Jewess. They made a secret agreement, a pact. The first part of the Soviet Union side of the pact was the Soviets would institute a pro-Arab policy solely as camouflage for its true intentions, which was to furnish aid to the Arabs, but never enough to enable the Arabs to destroy Israel. Egypt's Sadat realized that the Soviets had no intention of helping the Arabs win the war. that the Soviets, in selling them some equipment, were only trying to trap Egypt in the Soviet net. So Sadat kicked Soviet military advisors and civilian technicians out of Egypt. Russia is doing to Syria now what the Soviet Union did to Egypt. Even Gaddafi was saying the same thing as Bernstein, quote, "The Russians talk of all the weapons they are giving us, but it is propaganda." Gaddafi was right. The Soviet Union's highest-ranking intelligence official who defected to the West, General Pacepa, wrote in his book titled Disinformation that the anti-Israel narrative was put out by the KGB to increase anti-American sentiment in the Muslim world and draw those countries into the Soviet net. Now on to the second part of the Soviet Union's pact with Israel. The Soviets would open the gates of Soviet satellite countries to Jewish immigration to Israel. Should this be insufficient, Soviet Russia then would open its own gates to emigration.
But what we implicitly think is that science and technology drives progress and drive prosperity. They do, but only under certain conditions. If I had to say which is the country that had perhaps the best mathematicians, the best physicists, the best chemists, the best metallurgists, unqualified, I think I'd say the Soviet Union.
Israel's Talpiot Program is credited for turning the country into a technology juggernaut. Israel's tech boom began in the 1990s when more than 1 million Russian Jews arrived from the collapsing Soviet Union. With the Talpiot Program very likely being comprised of many Russian Jews, we can't help but wonder how much of this technology is making its way back to Russia. Former KGB General Oleg Kalugin said, "I remember that at the time I was head of the Leningrad KGB, and just for my district, 200 of the immigrants to Israel were our agents." And Putin, who was also KGB, said, "We consider those who left Russia and the former Soviet republics to take up permanent residence in Israel as our compatriots. Gee, I wonder why." We must not forget that there is a long history of Jews spying for the KGB. Now listen closely to this next part.
You know, you want a country that had great scientists, great mathematicians, great physicists, great metallurgists. The Soviet Union didn't do anything. But if you took one of these guys, you know, smuggled him out, put him in Palo Alto, you know, within 2 weeks he was producing a lot of added value. He was producing wealth.
Basically, Bibi was talking about smuggling Jews out of the Soviet Union, then putting them in California to steal technology, similarly to what Amir Gott and Kurt Seat did. But Bibi didn't say he was putting Israelis in California. He specifically said Soviets. Is Bibi a Soviet asset? Him and Putin seem to have a lot in common. Think of everything Bibi has done to the US the last couple of decades, and know that Putin wants him to be re-elected.
And at the end of this meeting, I think we really came to a lot of good conclusions. A really good conclusion for Israel, something very strong. He's a believer in Israel. He's a fan of Bibi, and really helping him a lot and will help him a lot, which is good for all of us.
To understand the technology transfers between Israel and the Soviets, look no further than Robert Maxwell, Israel's most famous Mossad agent. He worked with the Bulgarian Secret Service on a project called Neva. Neva was designed to be the single largest program for mass-scale theft of Western technology. Maxwell sold backdoored software all throughout the West. Bulgarian Secret Service would re-engineer the technology or build it from stolen blueprints, then sell it to other Soviet states. This benefited Bulgaria's economy, similarly to how stolen technology has transformed Israel's economy. Now, on to the third part of the Soviet Union's pact with Israel. The Soviets would absolutely guarantee the security of Israel. Fast forward to today. Russia's deputy foreign minister, Sergei Ryabkov, actually denied an Iran alliance in Syria and said, "We in no way underestimate the importance of measures that would ensure very strong security of the state of Israel. this is one of the top priorities of Russia. In February, Bibi said that Putin wants to get Iran out of Syria. And just 3 months ago, Russia, US, and Israel reached an understanding that Iranian forces have to leave Syria. At a meeting with Ariel Sharon in 2003, Putin said that Israel strives for peace, and that the Jewish people have suffered a great deal over the last decades. At a joint press conference with Israeli President Moshe Katsav in 2001, Putin said, "First of all, I would like to say that the way the Israeli government and the whole society in Israel deal with terror is a good example of how policy in this sphere should be designed. And I think that policy has grown out of decades of suffering endured by the Israeli people. Israel has been illegally occupying and colonizing Palestine for decades, and Putin is saying that it's the Israelis who are the ones that are suffering from terror. If Kamala Harris or Ted Cruz said this, you would call them a Zionist. Why isn't Putin held to the same standard?" He also said, "Russia believes that Israel is an element of stability in the Middle East, and hence in the whole world." So Putin's been putting out delusional Zionist propaganda since 2001. Putin has always supported Israel, and Bibi has always supported Russia. In a Victory Day letter to Putin, Bibi said, "It is hard to imagine what the world would look like today had it not been for the Russian people's incredible sacrifice. Today, millions across the globe gathered to salute those brave men and women who fought to free the world of Nazi tyranny." Bibi owes his life to Russia. He also made mention of the hundreds of thousands of Jewish men and women who fought in the ranks of the Soviet army, and said that veterans living in Israel would march to commemorate Victory Day. Bibi shares the same view as Israel's founding Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion. On the 33rd anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution, Ben-Gurion wrote to Stalin, "On behalf of the State of Israel, and on my own behalf, our best wishes to you personally and to the Soviet government and all its peoples. Our people, building its historic homeland, remember well the part played by the Soviet Union in defeating the Nazi enemy, as well as its contribution towards the establishment of the State of Israel. We send to the peoples of the USSR our sincere wishes for economic and cultural prosperity, happiness, and permanent peace." Because the US mainstream media criticizes Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea, some in the alt media will put out the myth that Jews hate Russia. Israel isn't sanctioning Russia after it annexed Crimea. Instead, Israel remained neutral, and trade between the two countries went up by 25%. In 1950, Golda Meir declared Israel neutral in the Cold War between the US and the Soviet Union. WikiLeaks released an email exchange between employees of Stratfor Intelligence, which revealed that Israel and Russia contracted a deal in 2008 where Israel provided Russia with codes for UAVs it sold to Georgia in exchange for Iranian aerial defense system codes. According to the document, the Georgians had at one point realized that their UAVs were compromised. Fast forward to today. Tehran suspects that Russia has given Israel codes from the S-300 aerial defense systems. According to Qatari news agency Al Jazeera, the Israeli F-35 flew unhindered over virtually the entire western part of Iran. Iran's aerial defense system, including the anti-air missile system supplied by Russia, were unable to follow the Israeli aircraft's movement into and out of the country's airspace. This deal happened in 2008 when Putin was president, then prime minister. The Israeli prime minister at the time was Ehud Olmert, whose parents were Bolsheviks from Russia. Not only is Putin trading intelligence with Israel now, but before the Soviet Union collapsed, he was the one negotiating with Israel to get Marcus Klingberg released. Jonathan Pollard spied on the US for Israel, then was sentenced to life in prison because Israel traded that intelligence to the Soviet Union. Kalmanovich was involved in passing that intelligence to the Soviet Union. He was sent to prison in 1988, and in 1993, after the Soviet Union was collapsed, he was handed back to Russia as part of an intelligence deal. So the KGB still exists, it's just been rebranded as the FSB. Putin was a KGB agent for 16 years, then entered politics in 1991 just as the Soviet Union was collapsing.
Is that those people who were in intelligence agencies, they knew that communism was coming to an end, and so they were preparing themselves for a bright new future of capitalism and personal enrichment. And of course, they had the networks. So,
do you honestly believe that he woke up one morning at 39 years old and decided to enter politics because he was a nationalist? The KGB knew the Soviet Union was going to collapse and put Putin into politics, similarly to what they did with Kalmanovich in Israel. When Putin first became president of Russia, that was the KGB taking back the country from the oligarchs and regaining their foothold. Because Putin went after some of the Jewish oligarchs, the alt media will try to paint him as someone who's against Jews, when in fact Putin's own words contradict them. After a meeting with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko in 2007, Putin said to Boris Nemtsov, "Can you imagine the idiot? He kept telling me my government is full of Jews and that I should get rid of them. He even said you are Jewish and that I should get rid of you too." That's a sample of what I'm going to cover in a future episode. Now, let's get to the history of the Soviet Union. The ideology of communism was created by Karl Marx, who was Jewish. The Bolshevik Revolution, which RT celebrates, was financed by Jewish American banker Jacob Schiff. The Bolshevik Revolution was led by Leon Trotsky and Vladimir Lenin, who were both Jewish. Putin, who was former Communist Party until the Soviet Union collapsed, admitted that the first Soviet government was 80 to 85% Jewish.
Решение о национализации этой библиотеки было принято советским правительством, первым советским правительством, и членами его являлись примерно 80-85% евреев.
What I'm saying is a lot of Israelis originate from the former Soviet Union, and we do care about their fate.
Even when Lenin died and Stalin took over, Israeli historian Sever Plocker writes that the Soviet Union's leadership was still predominantly Jewish. I'm not trying to blame all Jewish people for communism. What I'm doing here is trying to illustrate the relationship between Israel and Russia. Many of Israel's early inhabitants were Russian-born. They spoke Russian, read books and sang songs in Russian, and thought and dreamed in Russian. Stalin actually played a major role in creating the State of Israel. This is something that is rarely brought up because Israel is busy masquerading itself as a Western democracy in the Middle East. Stalin organized the Eastern European communist states to vote for the creation of Israel, and that bloc provided the 2/3 majority needed for victory in the UN vote of November 1947. Without Stalin, Israel would have never been a state. The Soviet Union shipped tanks and planes to the new Israeli army. This was a major reason why the Jews were able to expel the Arabs in 1948. Israel's founding Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, said, "Without the Soviet arms, the state would have never survived the onslaught of 5 Arab armies." David Duke, who used to be extremely critical of Stalin, is now pushing Russian propaganda, claiming that Stalin was a Russian nationalist and that he created Israel and purged Jews because he wanted to put Russia first, not because he wanted to infiltrate the West. And there are people out there who believe him. Remember, this is the same guy that's telling you that Trump is playing 3D chess.
By simply recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish state, President Trump has struck a mighty blow against the criminal Jewish supremacist state of Israel. But Donald Trump may have done the ultimate deep chess, or what they call 3D chess move.
At a meeting with Shimon Peres in 2012, Putin said that it is no accident that the Soviet Union was among the initiators and supporters of the creation of the State of Israel. Stalin helped create the State of Israel because he hoped it would create chaos in the region and bring about the downfall of the West. This is exactly what has happened. Israel is destroying the US from within. Russia doesn't have to fire a shot. If I'm Putin, Israel is my best friend.
Follows the statement of a very ancient Chinese philosopher, Sun Tzu, who was born 500 years BC, before Jesus Christ, who said something to the effect that fighting war on a battlefield is the most stupid and primitive way of fighting a war. The highest art of warfare is not to fight at all, but to subvert anything of value in your enemy's country, be it moral traditions, religion, respect to your authority and leaders, cultural traditions, anything. Put white against black, old against young, I don't know, wealthy against poor, and so on. Doesn't matter. As long as it disturbs society, as long as it cuts the moral fiber of a nation, it's good.
מי הקים את הקג"ב? לפני כן קראו לו NKVD. יהודים?
In 2010, former US President Bill Clinton said that Russian Jewish immigrants to Israel were an obstacle to peace with the Palestinians, and that they were the hardest core people against the division of the land. I don't support Clinton, but he does bring up an important point here. Zionists are doing to the Arabs exactly what the Bolsheviks did to Europeans. Speaking at Voting Democracy 2015, Avigdor Lieberman said, "Whoever is not with Israel, we should take an axe and lower his head." During the Soviet Union, anti-Semitism was punishable by death. This was verified by Nobel Peace Prize winner and Russian historian Alexander Solzhenitsyn in his book titled 200 Years Together. Lieberman was basically saying that he wants to rule in Israel the way they ruled in the Soviet Union.
Lieberman is the living face of Bibi Netanyahu's Zionist policies. I sometimes think he would have rather remained in Russia so long as it was the Soviet Union and so long as he were in a significant position of power there. In addition to reminding me of Cheney, he is reminiscent of, and indeed might well be a latent version of, Joseph Stalin.
Also, in the third part of the Soviet Union's pact with Israel was to exchange intelligence reports with each other. Moshe Dayan, the Israeli defense minister in 1967, was the one who ordered his troops to attack the USS Liberty. According to former CIA station chief Wilbur Evelyn Crane, Dayan then blackmailed the US, threatening to give all of their intelligence to the Soviets if they didn't drop their investigation of the Liberty. This is like murdering someone's family, then threatening to murder them if they dare talk about what happened. The US government covered up what happened on the Liberty, and Israel gave the intelligence to the Soviets anyway. Then Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir was the one who authorized trading Pollard's stolen intelligence to the Soviets. He was also the one who told Rafi Eitan to get Robert Maxwell to market Promise software. Ari Ben-Menashe, former intelligence advisor to Shamir, was the one who hired Yehuda Ben-Hanan to create the back door for a Promise. Shamir told Ben-Menashe that he viscerally hated the US, and that the first thing he would do as prime minister would be to open the Soviet bloc to Israel. And that's exactly what he did. Shamir was a Bolshevik born in Russia. Seymour Hersh wrote that while Shamir was in the Mossad during the 50s and the 60s, he was known for his efforts to improve relationships with his KGB counterparts. An unnamed Israeli told Hersh that Shamir's relaying of information to the Soviets was his way of demonstrating that Israel could be a much more dependable and important collaborator in the Middle East than the Persians and Arabs. Quote, "What Arab could give you this?" He's absolutely right. Israel is able to offer Russia and China Western technology and their main rivals' intelligence. This is something that Iran and Syria can't do. Aside from the Belt and Road Initiative, this is why Russia and China have such a close relationship with Israel.
So today I have one message for anyone seeking to defend themselves from cyber attack. What happened?
Ladies and gentlemen, this conference has just been hacked. Ironic, isn't it? A conference dedicated to cybersecurity being hacked. We are based in a country not far from Israel. That's all you need to know for now. The bank accounts of everyone sitting in this hall have just been frozen. The intellectual property of your companies is in our hands. So are your private conversations. This information is being sent to your competition and your enemies. Have a nice day.
Bibi wrote in 1995 that militant Islam is going to bring down the World Trade Centers, but it was actually him that did it. And now he's saying that another country is stealing your intellectual property and sending it to your competition when it's actually his country that's doing it.
Particularly in technology, there seems to be a huge growth in Israel. The amount of technology that is developed in your country, and yet it's a tiny little country, and you sell it to, you work with countries, massive countries like India and so forth. That's obviously part of your plan, right?
It's very much my plan. It's